Hi, good morning. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Neka Chiazor, your host and Cox's Vice President of Public and Government Affairs in Virginia and parts of North Carolina. I'm so pleased to be with you this morning, and we're going to be in good company today with Tara Brown. I've got a lot to share about Tara. Hey, Tara.
Hi, good morning, Neka.
Good morning. Good morning. Tara Brown, she's an executive in the cable industry, and she's also a national humorist who performs across the country. She performs family-friendly, clean, rated G comedy.
Yes.
Now, she's shared stages with big names, right? Jeannie Robertson, Alana Glazer, and the late John Witherspoon.
Yes.
And you've also numerous awards, including the Jeannie Robertson Comedy with Class, right? Comedy with Class. With Class.
Yeah.
Comedy with Class humor competition.
You have to say with your pinky extended. Yes.
Right, where you bested hundreds of people, is that right?
That right? Is right, across the country. I'm really honored about that competition. It was a nationwide search where they look for clean comedians to submit some material, and they choose from hundreds, possibly even thousands across the country. I don't know what the final tally was. And they chose little old me, said that they thought my comedy was special enough to win the competition. So I'm the most recent winner of that. And, two things you win. It was a cash prize, and then the even larger thing for me is I got the opportunity to perform with Miss Jeannie Robertson at her any show that I chose. So I chose a show in Dallas this past February. So got to perform at the Winspear Opera House in front of about 2,000 people, which was amazing. Which to date is the largest audience I perform comedy in front of. But I will qualify that now because I don't know, in good company audience, you might have to stop that,
Right.
And recently I did a set for my church, a virtual show for my church. And at you know how it's like you go back and you look to see how many people have viewed it now. And at last count, it was over 1,400 people. So I'm just honored that the comedy is reaching a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So I'm honored by that. And Robinson is awesome, by the way. Amazing.
Honored that you're with us today. Honored.
Thank you for having me. Seriously.
Thank you for coming on. So let's talk about you, right? Let's talk about you.
My favorite subject. Let's do that.
Talk to us. Share a word that describes how you are doing right now.
Right now, in this moment, I am hopeful. There's a lot of uncertainty and sadness and different things going on, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful at what I see. I'm hopeful that at the end of the day, we as human beings love each other and care about each other and want what's best for each other. So I believe in our ability to do the right thing and take care of one another on lots of levels. I know with COVID-19 going on right now, there's a lot of, fear and uncertainty. And, I think it's okay to say in those moments when you feel uncertain, I feel uncertain, and I have my moments where it just feels sad, but then I like to replace it with feelings of hopefulness when I see us helping each other, looking out for one another. And I think the thing that makes me more sad than anything is divisiveness on any level. Mm-hmm. And so, when you see something as simple as to mask or not to wear a mask, like that just, it makes me sad when we do those types of things. But I am hopeful and encouraged that at the end of the day, we will get through this and we will be better having gone through it.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So talk to me, because you mentioned hopeful and you mentioned, you're hopeful, even though you might have moments of sadness, but you're hopeful, but you refer to yourself as a humorist.
I do.
And so talk to us, what is the difference between a humorist and a comedian?
Well, I think on paper, and that's a good word to use for that. On paper, a lot of times people look at humorists as people who write funny things. Like, you can have a humor column or you write humorous words or that sort of thing. And I have written things that are humorous. And they look at comedians as someone who performs humor in front of audiences, where humorists sometimes don't. But there are humorists who do perform in front of audience. They tend to be larger audience, like at conferences and theaters and that sort of thing. So I think a lot of times people think about comedians as just being in comedy clubs, but I'm a humorist and a comedian. You know, I like to say that my comedy, what I always say about my comedy is that it travels well across all time zones. So because I do clean and family friendly comedy, I can do churches and organizations, you know, in different places across the country. And I've been honored to play them both. Like I said, I've done comedy in a pizza bar, you know, for a few people who weren't listening. And I've also performed in front of, like I said, the Winspear Opera House in Dallas, Texas. So I'm happy to be able to travel this comedy, humor, whatever. You can call me whatever you like. I've been called worse, I promise. Whatever works for you.
I'm just going to call you Tara. That's all.
There you go. My mother would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. And I want to make
Tara with the soft A, because someone says Tara, and I said my mom prefers Tara.
Tara.
So I keep my mama happy.
Hey, I like keeping your mama happy too.
Yes.
So Tara, talk to us too about comedy at this time. Like, what's that been like for you?
It has been a really, really interesting time because, you know, mid-March, everything shut down, right?
Could you joke about that? Like, do you joke about shutdown? Like,
I have in my set, I do it. It's funny, you had to pivot. So what ended up happening in mid-March until now, comedy, there were no comedy shows. You know, comedy clubs were closed, obviously. Places to perform were closed. You know, you couldn't travel to many places. But what started emerging were virtual comedy shows. People had the ability to do comedy for audiences, for Zoom meetings. I have done now probably about 6 or 7 of them since March, you know, for corporations and organizations who want to give their employees some hope during these times. The first virtual show I did was actually from my company. I was honored to be asked to perform, you know, for our staff. And so it's a really fun thing. It's really, and what I love about it is it really tests your mettle as a comedian because, you know, you get this energy from a crowd. Like I'm telling you a joke and it lands and you laugh and I'm like, thank you, everybody. Good night. You know, this is what I came for. When you're doing a virtual show, you don't get that instant feedback, you know? And so the interesting part about that is I'm doing comedy and I'm looking at a screen of people and I can possibly tell if they're laughing, but I can't hear them. So what that forces me to do is just trust the material that I've written. You know that this has worked when you performed it live. So trust that it will work to these people as well. And 2 things that struck me that was so funny about virtual shows I've done is I did a show and it was a gentleman and everyone was muted, so I couldn't hear them. But every time I would say something, he would double over in laughter to the point he would fall out of the box of the screen. And that would crack me up so hard. So I was like, that's my guy. So I'm just like staring at him, knowing that the material is landing with him. So that was fun. And then the other honor I got to do during this pandemic is I got to perform comedy for my church, a virtual show for my church, which, you know, if you follow me on Facebook for 5 minutes, you know how much I love, you know, my church and my pastor. So that was a complete honor to do that. And that was nerve-wracking because I'm sitting, you know, in this empty room with basically me and my pastor and a couple other people who are all socially distanced. And I tell you what, I performed in front of 2,000 people in Dallas, and that wasn't nearly as nerve-wracking as performing in front of my pastor. And it was funny because he joked. I said, I'm so nervous about this. And he goes, why? I was like, because none of those people I performed for were my pastor. So it was good. And so that was an honor to be able to have the opportunity to do that. So you make adjustments. So to your point, I've had to add, because you have to address the quote unquote elephant in the room about, you know, we are shutting in and different things. So I had to make some adjustments to my set in the beginning to do some jokes about quarantine and that sort of thing. One thing I didn't do is I didn't make any jokes about COVID-19 because people have died from this. You know, now, unfortunately, we're at over 100,000 people who died. And I just felt insensitive to make any kind of COVID-related jokes. So I stayed away from that. I talked about quarantining and essential businesses and who got to decide what an essential business was, because honestly, the lady who waxes my chin hair, she's essential. I need her open. So stuff like that and things that brought people together. And it was a real honor to be able to do that. And when you're looking at faces on a Zoom chat, and people look sad, and then you say something that makes people smile and feel good and helps them to forget about what's going on. That is an honor and a privilege that I'm so grateful that I get the opportunity to do. So I'm looking forward to doing live shows again, but you know what? All things happen for a reason, and I'm not rushing it.
Not rushing.
I'm not rushing it.
Now you talked about, you did a set. You did a set
Yes.
company,
Yes.
right? So let's talk a little bit about you in your company, because in addition to being a humorist, right, you're a director of media relations for a really positive company.
I am. I'm very honored to, like you said, be the director of media relations for a national television network that's just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, here where I live. And I am really grateful that I have a wonderful and supportive employer who has been super supportive of me with my comedy and has encouraged me. And I enjoy that so very much. And doing comedy and having a full-time job, I essentially feel like I have two full-time jobs. So because my employer has been so great to me about my comedy, I feel this, added level of responsibility and pressure to make sure I do my daytime job well. So I try really hard to do a good job and represent my company well. And I think that is, been helpful in them being supportive of me because they know that, I do comedy, but at the end of the day, I'm going to do my job above anything else. And so I enjoy that. And I enjoy the people I work with, and it's been fun. And I get to entertain them from time to time. So that's not a bad deal.
That's not a bad deal at all.
No.
That's not a bad deal. So who opened doors for you? Because honestly, you've got like two full-time jobs in a sense.
I literally do. Yes. On a lot of levels, it's funny because from a professional level, something we have to remember, when you're starting out in your career, it's important. You feel intimidated, right? Like you're in these rooms, sometimes in these high-power meetings, and you don't know if you should speak up or, would I be too much and that sort of thing. I think it's important for people who've come before you to recognize that, you might not always feel empowered, and to empower you. And I will never forget, I started my career in book publishing. I do PR. Excuse me. I do PR for a living. So, I started my career in book publishing in New York, where I'm from. And I will never forget the simplest of this act, and it really stayed with me. I was a publicity assistant, which is kind of the first level you start out in the PR department in book publishing. And we went to this party. We always have these book parties. And you're in a room with these people, and I don't know any of them, but I have to be there, to help out. And I will never forget standing kind of in a corner to myself, talking to the caterers, because I just felt like, okay, I can talk to them and feel okay. And I remember my boss at the time being very intentional about bringing me into conversations. I think she saw that I was kind of separating myself, and she was like, hey, so-and-so, have you met Tara? And then it made me engage with people. And I never forgot that. And so for me, it's like, and I do it also in comedy. When I see a younger comedian, or a newer comedian, I should say, on the scene who may not be, as connected as some of us. They call me, by the way, another thing, you don't know this, in Charlotte, they call me the godmother of the Charlotte comedy scene, which I love the nickname. A comedian gave me that nickname, and I love it so much. I think it's cheesy when you give yourself a name, but when someone else gives it to you, you can run with it. So he calls me the godmother of the Charlotte comedy scene, and I adore that name. But for me, what that also says is I put this responsibility on myself. No one's done it to me, but I feel a certain responsibility to bring people in, to make people feel a part. And no, I don't want anyone to feel, left out. And I especially have a heart for women comedians doing this. So a lot of times with the women, I'll kind of say, hey, I'm here for you if you need me, and so on and so forth. Like even with this pandemic, a lot of them who I knew were single, I was texting them like, hey, I haven't seen you post on Facebook in a while. Are you okay? What's going on? So I think it's important. So I remember those people who opened those doors for me, who just ushered me in and made me feel a part of something and to feel safe. So in PR, in comedy, the same way. The thing that's really great when you start out in comedy is you open for people. Like you mentioned, some of the people I open for. And the gentleman who I opened for once. His name was Ryan Hamilton, and he's a clean comedian. He's so ridiculously funny. And one year I had seen him perform. I sat in the audience and watched him perform. And then the next year, and I think I was only 1 year into comedy at that time. The next year he came back to our comedy club, and I called the person who I knew there. I was like, can I please open for him? And so they made it work for me. So I'm in the green room with this guy. And again, going back to the PR days, my early PR days, you're like, do I say something? Whatever. So I wanted to ask him so many questions, but I wanted to, as a PR person too, what you learn is not to fan out, not to geek out with people. Just like, oh my God. Although I will tell you, the one time I did geek out over someone, in my head at least, was I had to do some work with Maureen McCormick, AKA Marsha Brady. And I have been around lots of celebrities in my life, but the funniest thing in my head is I was at LAX waiting for her at the bottom of an escalator, waiting for her. And when she was coming down the escalator, in my head, I was screaming, oh my God, it's Marsha Brady, So that's the one fangirl moment I've spent time with Sidney Poitier, So wow. That was a big honor. And I was like, oh my God, I just like Mr. Poitier, But when Marsha Brady came down the escalator, I for some reason I fangirled in my head. But anyway, at the comedy club, I wanted to ask him so many questions, how you got started, whatever. So finally I worked up the nerve. We were working together for 3 shows, 3 nights. And I said, I don't want to disturb your process, but, he goes, I have no process. And I asked him questions, and he was so great to me. And my favorite moment of that, right before the very last show we were going to do together, I said to him, I said, there's this joke you do that I love. I haven't noticed that you've done it the past couple of nights. He goes, wow, I haven't told that joke in a while. And at the third final show, he closed with that joke. And I was like, oh my God, I love him so much, So it's, I think too, as a comedian, you feel a certain level of responsibility when you've been doing it for a while. And I've only been doing it for 6 years, so I still feel like a baby in this. But I think older people who've been doing this longer feel a certain responsibility to kind of help, be there for newer comedians. And I want to be a part of that as well.
I like that. I like the sense of responsibility to go through it. And talk about geeking out. Like I know you say people, PR, we're not supposed to geek out over folks. True confession, the first time I geeked out over someone was when I met you at that NAMIC Diversity Conference in New York. I totally geeked out over Don Lemon in the
that was great.
That was awesome.
That was really, really fun. I had another really cool moment with that. It was so obscure, but I loved it. I had the opportunity years ago to go to Comic-Con before I even understood what Comic-Con was. Like, this is not my world. But from a professional standpoint, I got to go when I'm working in book publishing. And I didn't even, again, now looking back, I was like, wow, that was a big deal that I got to go. But anyway, so after we were doing the thing we did, the gentleman who we were there with, he set up this dinner for a bunch of us. So I was sitting next to a gentleman who so happened to be a writer on The Cosby Show, back in the day. And so I was telling him my favorite episode of The Cosby Show is that when Vanessa went to Baltimore. And he goes, I wrote that episode. And I was like, oh my God, it was just such a great moment to be sitting next to the guy who wrote the episode of Vanessa going to Baltimore and The Cosby Show. So that was another geek out moment in a nerdy sort of way.
See, I was going to say, it's amazing that you even remember the episode of Vanessa Goes to Baltimore.
You know why I remember it so well? Wow. Because in that moment, Claire was every Black mother in America. She was the Black mother you knew. When she went off on Vanessa, I heard my mother. But I love that. And when Rudy goes, Vanessa went all the way to Baltimore. That was my favorite episode. So to sit next to the man who created that just was so cool.
So can we pivot a second to every Black mother in America right now?
Oh my God, yes.
Let's go there, given the circumstances. We talked a little bit earlier about our companies, right? I know, I'm going to put it out there. I know you're with INSP. I love INSP. They're inspirational. I'm with Cox, another inspirational company. And I'm thinking about as people who work in spaces where our companies believe in diversity and inclusion, right? And as Black women at this time where everything around us seems so divisive, what do you say? How do you, as a comedian with that gift, bring levity to moments like this? How do you do that?
You just have to be who you are. A lot of times I have a very big personality. I'm extremely extroverted. And sometimes when you're in situations, you wonder if that's too much. And over the years, I've had to be like, oh my God, I said this. How did they receive that? You know, and I still do that to a certain extent. But what I've learned has served me well is to be who I am. And who I am is someone who loves all people. You know, if I am of that school, you treat, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So, regardless of what that looks like. So, I treat everyone the same. And I think people see that authenticity from me and that I have a heart for people. So I think a lot of times, if you are just your authentic self, people gravitate towards that and then they will, you know, honor that. And so I think a lot of times, you know, we just have to, and that's how we, you know, enact change in things, you know, just be a light. And sometimes, you know, one of the things with comedy, I try to, you know, we're from a scriptural reference, we talk to be salt and light, right? So I try to be salt and light. You know, I perform comedy, clean comedy, in places where there's not a lot of clean comedy happening. And I'll never forget a time I was in a comedy club and there was a lot of vulgarity going on. And I was like, I just didn't feel like I fit. But then fast forward a week later, I was sitting there talking to some comedians who I knew work blue, and I don't judge that, but then they came to me for some advice for something. And so, you know, you never know why you're in a situation and why you're called to do something. And so I'm just grateful that any time I get to be a part of something like a conversation that helps, you know, move the dialogue along.
Can we talk about fit? What have you done, right? Again, as a woman of a certain age, as you say,
Yes.
comedy I love.
Yes.
What have you done to navigate fit? Where people may say or think they don't fit, or they're told they don't fit. They don't fit an image. They don't
Yeah.
fit a profile. They don't fit the material. How have you navigated that? What can you share with our viewers about navigating that sort of situation?
I think, you know, at the end of the day, it gets back to being your authentic self. And I think that has to start from within you. You know, I can't make you accept me, but I can accept me. You know, it's just as something as simple as this morning. I was like, do I want to wear that purple lipstick? It might be too much. I'm like, I want to wear purple lipstick. I'm going to wear purple lipstick. It makes me feel better. It helps my mood. But I think what we have to give ourselves those messages is that we are enough. And I think the thing that's unfortunate a lot of times in society is we get beat down for being too thin or too fat or too this or too dark or too light or whatever. But I think if you have, you know, a healthy self-esteem within yourself, you know, you're going to get those darts thrown at you, but then you're able to manage it a little bit better. Listen, do I always succeed at that? I don't. You know, I have my doubts just like everyone else does. But what I try to focus on are the positive aspects of myself. You know, I I belong in this room. You know, my voice means something. Yes, it's okay to speak up if you have something to say. I think you have to, the challenge with that too is you have to guard against speaking up for the sake of speaking up. You know, sometimes I think people want to be seen, and so they sometimes unnecessarily, you know, say things to just make sure that they're being heard. But what I found is that, you know, if you produce good work, you know, if you are a person who do what you say you're going to do, um, people will respect that and respond to that. So I think it starts from within. So you have to find what you need to find within yourself to say, I am enough. I belong here. I'm okay. I can't control. You know, the expression that goes, you know, what someone thinks about you is not your business. So I can't control what you think about me. I can just control how I present myself in this situation.
I love that. I
Yes.
love
Thank you.
thank you for presenting that to us today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Neka. This is awesome. I told you, Pinky's in the air. We needed cups of tea. We need a spot of tea.
Got my cup. I've got
Yes, a spot of tea. Oh, you have it. I see it. I'm prepared. So prepared.
You know, I can talk to you forever. I got a couple more questions for you because I think there's so much that you have to share. You're in North Carolina.
I am in Charlotte, by way of Brooklyn, New York. Shout out to Brooklyn, New York.
Charlotte to Brooklyn, New York. And we've got folks, we have, you know, some of our employees at Cox are in North Carolina as well. We have folks in Raleigh and we have folks in Currituck County. We have folks in North Carolina. What's it like in North Carolina right now? I mean,
I,
I've been in a stay-at-home condition in Virginia.
yeah,
What's it like out
I like North Carolina. This is my second home. Like I said, I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. I moved to Charlotte when is it? 2003. Wow, so long ago. Charlotte is a really great place. It's a fun city. What I love about Charlotte, for me, I'm a New Yorker, so I'm a big city type of girl. So I couldn't live but so rural. So Charlotte is the largest city in the state of North Carolina. Raleigh's the capital, but Charlotte's the largest. And so I get the benefits of still living in a big city, but I get nice weather all year round. The only thing that gets different when I go back to New York is I have to sweeten my own tea. I'm not used to that. It's like I'm accustomed to sweet tea now. So when I go back and I was like, this is not sweet. And they're like, no. I was like, I am offended, But I love Charlotte. I love the Carolinas. North Carolina, when you drive anywhere in North Carolina, you look up at that sky and you understand why they say Carolina blue. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful state to live in. I really like North Carolina.
Well, I know Carolina loves you, and those of you in good company, we're enjoying you too. But before we wrap up our time today,
Yes.
would you please treat us to one of your favorite jokes?
One of my favorite jokes is this one, and I'll give it to you because it's a nice short one. I say, as I've gotten older, I have this struggle every day with waxing my chin hairs. I will wax these suckers off in the morning, and by nighttime, they're back. And not only are they back, but now they grow in long and white. So if I let it go on too long down there, I'll start looking like a civil rights icon up under my chin, like a Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass mix. And I found, NECA, that people only like that during Black History Month. Doesn't really work in like May or June, So that's one of my favorites, and people tend to resonate. Older folks seem to like that joke because they have chin hairs too.
Okay. All right, Tara.
Thank you, Ms. NECA. This is so much fun.
This is so much fun. What do you think? What do you want from the world? These are my two wrap-up questions for you.
Okay.
What do you think the world want from you?
I want the world to take care of each other. I want us to remember that we're all in this together, that we all bleed red. I want us to just be more concerned about one another. And that, honestly, for me, is that. Just love each other. It says love each other as yourself. And then I'd also love, while you're loving yourself and each other, to go find me on YouTube at Tara Brown Comedy. I got some great videos over there, and you can come learn more about me. So love each other. Let's just remember that. Let's start and end with love.
Let's start and end with love.
Yes.
All right. Well, you heard it here, folks. Tara Brown. Let's start and end with love. TaraBrownComedy.com.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Tara, for joining us today. This has been terrific.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so with that, I guess we'll bump out. Love the fact that we had her here today. Love the fact, in good company, viewers, that we have this opportunity to bring you good and positive news from around Virginia and North Carolina. And until we see next time, a great and wonderful day. Bye for now.
We ended too early.
We ended too early. I know.